Here we are. Module 2, Lesson 1 is all about the 5 love languages. Skeeter is here. She knows all about the 5 love languages. And if you've ever heard me talk before, more than likely you've heard me talk about the 5 love languages. So let's jump into this and get to know. If you already know yours, great. Don't skip ahead. Go ahead and listen and just let it sink in to a whole new level, because knowing your love language and your family's love language can really shift the dynamics in a family. You might know it, right? You might have taken the test, you might have read the book years ago, but never actually used the material, used the information. And this is critical. I've had couples come to me, and just by using this tiny information that you get from knowing a love language shifted their whole dynamic. They even told me that, wow, our relationship hasn't been this good in over a year and a half. Can you imagine? So this is how powerful this information can be. So if you haven't taken it in a while, maybe it's been years, or maybe you just don't remember, it's a free quiz. Okay, you're going to go to the 5 love languages. Just Google that, and there's free quizzes. There's some for couples, individuals, single people, kids, teens. Go ahead and do it. But be sure to talk to the person about their results. I recently gave it to my daughter again, and hers came out one way, but she didn't actually agree with all of it. So that doesn't mean that it's not worth taking. It just means be sure to talk about it, because my daughter might interact with me a little differently than she does with her dad or with friends or grandma. So there might be some differences there. So first things up, I say it's the first love language. The first one we're going to talk about is words of affirmation. Now, if your spouse, your partner, is words of affirmation, I personally feel like this is the easiest one. And the reason I say that, I am words of affirmation. So here's what it can sound like and look like. It can be getting a post-it note and just writing a little letter, a little note. Thank you so much for that amazing meal, and like putting it somewhere they can find it. It can look like just seeing them and telling them, oh, like, I love your eyes. Stuff that you've probably said before, right? At this point in your relationship, but you're expressing it. You're telling them, you're sharing it with them. What you have to be aware of is, because words of affirmation, because that helps them, it makes them feel so good, and it makes them feel loved. My love language is words of affirmation. So if my partner, if Sam, is not using words of affirmation, even if she is holding my hand, even if she is cleaning the house, if she's buying me gifts, if she's doing all the other 4 but not speaking my love language, guess what? I'm not going to feel loved. Which is a shame, right? Because there might be some ahas right now as you're watching this, because you're like, man, I've been busting my tail doing all of these things, trying to show this person that I love them, and they're not getting it. Oh, maybe I'm not actually speaking their love language. So here's where you have to watch out. With people that are words of affirmation, when you're having a conversation or an argument, you have to be very careful. I remember in a previous relationship, someone said, I don't care. And to me, of course, it was, I don't care. Which it probably was not at that level, but I didn't communicate that. And it was words, but it was words used, and it wasn't clear. So it hurt me. If you are saying to your spouse, like, leave, I don't want you here, right? In the heat of a moment, if they're words of affirmation, they're going to hold on to that sentence, and it's going to bury into their mind and their heart even though you've long forgotten it. They're going to hold on to that. So be sure if something slips out of your mouth where later you realize, oh my gosh, I really need to go back and talk about that. And in the future, I really need to choose my words carefully. So that is words of affirmation. Be very careful. It can be written. Some people, I'll share this, because there's also a book called The 5 Love Languages for Work. But your work love language might be a little different than your normal life. So be sure to really think about that. Some people love grand gestures. But if you know that your loved one gets easily embarrassed, then that might not be the thing. So taking into account your specific person that you're thinking about. Next, let's talk about physical touch. Now, to be honest, physical touch, a lot of people, their mind goes straight to sex, and it's not the case. That is definitely a big part of it, especially if you're in a relationship that involves sex, right? But if we are wanting to give our relationships, whether it's, right, a little kid, it might look like a high five or a hug or snuggles or laying in the bed and reading books together at night. It could look like that as physical touch. And if you stop and think about it for a moment, if you have kids or even friends, family, think about who is like really touchy. Maybe they might push you, or they might grab you, or they might put you in a headlock. I would guess those would be physical touch as their love language. With someone that you love, an intimate relationship, it could look like a little back rub. I know when we watch a show together, if I'm just going to be sitting there anyway, I will rub Sam's feet because I know that is something that, hey, everyone would love, and I'm just sitting there anyway. I might as well do that. It can look like a hug. So if you don't know this, a 20-second hug will start to release dopamine in your brain, which will make you feel good. So a 20-second hug at first is going to seem a little awkward because it's really long. Usually an average hug is around 2 to 4 seconds. So 20 seconds is a long time, but try it out and see what you think. It can do wonders. And you can even explain to them, like, I'm doing an experiment. Let's try this. And you can kind of both laugh and chuckle uncomfortably at first and see what you think. So, here's the thing. And I know we've only gone over 2, but with love languages, when we're hurt, when we don't feel loved from the other person, we tend to withdraw our love as well. And that's where it can get dangerous, right? So we should always bring 100%. It's not 50-50. It is bring your A game. If you're both bringing 100%, right? If one of you drops, the other one's still up here and can help love and support you. If you're only bringing 50 and then you drop some more, it's going to be dangerous for that relationship. And I know you want to be a better role model if you have kids, for them to see that, just because my feelings are hurt doesn't mean I'm going to not love you or not love your dad or your mom or whoever it is. Okay, so the third one, we've talked about words of affirmation, physical touch. Next, let's talk about quality time. This is one of my daughters and Sam's, so I can talk to this one pretty well. It's actually not mine. So a funny one that I will mention, look for this. I might have to go run an errand or drive and do something real quick. Sam will usually offer like, oh, you want me to come with you? And I'm usually like, oh, I don't care. You don't have to. I can just listen to something, like listen to a podcast or some music and do my own thing. And it's not a big deal for me. But for her, she's like, oh, that's time together. And we're usually talking, right? Some more quality time. You could go on a walk. That way you're getting in two things at once. You're getting in exercise and you're getting in quality time. What I would caution you, and I've heard some people give opposite advice. Some people will say, you know what, if you're in the same room and close to each other, that can count as quality time. But what I will say is, it is not the same. Now, you might come to an agreement and you might say, oh, let's, hang out together and read at the same time. Or let's hang out together and we can play on our phones at the same time. That's a little different. But if you're just sitting there and watching a show together, there's no real connection. Yeah, you might be enjoying something and it might be fodder for something to talk about later, but try to make some intentional quality time where you are making eye contact, where you're truly listening. You're not distracted by your phone. If your phone bings, you don't hear it. You can put it on silent, right? To where it's not going to distract you from this person. So an important lesson I learned when my daughter was little was that quality time doesn't have to be a vacation. It doesn't have to be a whole weekend or even a half a day. When Scarlett was little, we were driving past the park and she was like, oh, Mommy, can we go to the park? And it was not scheduled for that day. So I was like, And I think at the time was in my head, right? The story I was telling myself that it needed to be 30 minutes or an hour, like a good chunk of time. And I was like, we only have 5 or 10 minutes. Would that be okay? And she was like, yeah. So I was like, oh, wow. So we parked. I said, all right, I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes. We can run out there, play hard. As soon as this goes off, we have to sprint back and we'll have a race all the way back to the car. So we did that. And guess what? She was thrilled. It was the best. And that was an example of when my mindset changed around how long quality time has to be. When I talk to teachers in schools, I encourage teachers to find a student that they're struggling with a little bit, and it's called 2x10, and I forget who to give credit of this to, but it's not mine. I use it, it's not mine. 2x10 is 2 minutes, 10 days in a row. Now, you can just do it forever, but just think a minimum of 2 minutes of, I'm going to talk to this person, not to tell them all the chores they have to do or to get on to them or lecture them. I'm just going to talk. Maybe it's their favorite YouTube thing or their dream that goes on and on. But you're going to give them that quality time and attention that's not necessarily structured how maybe you like to structure things. So with a teacher, it could be 2 minutes at the start of the day talking about what they did at home or anything that's not related to school that the kid wants to talk about. And it just really solidifies that relationship. So that was an example. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 we will say is acts of service. That might look like doing laundry, cooking a meal, all of those, what I would consider chores. That's what it is to a non-acts of service person. And when I was growing up, I was words of affirmation and my mom was acts of service. And we did not speak the same language at all. And even my Scarlett's dad, he was acts of service as well. And so here's the thing, what I finally figured out is that you don't have to speak the same language to get along, right? I'm words of affirmation. Sam is quality time and acts of service. So what that means is I have to try extra hard because acts of service is at the bottom for me, meaning I don't want to do that, right? Why would I want to do dishes or laundry? Like, that's the worst for me. But in my head, just knowing the fact that, oh, Sam does not like laundry. It's the worst for her. If I know that, then it gives me some extra incentive to want to do it. I can easily put in some headphones and while I listen to something or watch a show, I can do that. And even though I don't like it and I would never choose it for myself. You can tell I'm a pile person. I would totally do that for her because I know that's her love language. So I hope that makes sense. So if you are high on acts of service and your lowest is one of the others, then it's going to be extra hard for you to do maybe words of affirmation or physical touch or quality time, because that's not your top love language. And that's important for us all to know. So acts of service, how can you serve that other person? The last one, 5, is gifts. Now it's not about greed or I want material objects, but it has more to do with this person has picked out a unique special gift for me. They spent the time, their mind and their heart, and it's all wrapped up just for me. It's a little different than giving like a gift card, right? Same with me when it comes to words of affirmation. If someone gets me a birthday card and they just sign it and they just scribble their name on it, that's it's worthless to me. I don't want that. If you write even like a sentence or two, something like, if you fill up the page, I'm going to melt and I will keep it forever. So with gifts, if there's some meaning behind it, if there's some intention. I know I heard the story of someone that had casually mentioned, oh, they have the best bread. And this other person remembered that and they went out of their way to get that bread from like another city and give that as a gift. And that just blew the person's mind and it meant so much. So if you're someone that loves to give gifts, you probably love to give and receive. Now, it can be a little different. So take the test. But that is your homework. I know this video is a little longer than usual because we were going through all 5. Take the test. Go ahead and do that right now. Go ahead and at least take it for yourself. Share the link with your family. And then I want you to go into the Facebook group and share, this is my love language. I already knew this, or, oh, I didn't know this fact, or, oh, I learned this about my love language. Once you take it on the website, you can read a little bit more. There's even, I believe, a newsletter from the site that will talk about different ideas that they might send to your email. So you can be like, oh, for physical touch, you can do this, or just little stuff to kind of keep it fresh. So that is it. I can't wait to see you over in the Facebook group sharing what your love language is. See you there.